If you are new to canning or haven't tried canning at all before, this is a great recipe for you to try. We're going to do applesauce, and this one actually doesn't even require a canner because we're going to be doing a method called water bath canning, which means that you just need a large pot instead of a canner. So this is great if you're not sure if you want to invest in a lot of canning supplies yet, as the pressure canner is one of the most expensive pieces of equipment to start with. So I'm going to give you guys detailed instructions on canning this recipe in particular, and you guys can try it out and see if you maybe want to invest in more canning supplies and get further into home canning. So to start, you're just going to cut up your apples. You can really cut them into any size that you want. I like to do slices because it seems to be like the balance for time and you know how fast they cook. If you dice them up, they're going to cook a lot faster. You can also choose whether or not you want to peel yours. I decide not to because I find that I can blend them up enough that no one really notices that they're there, and it adds more nutritional value. The only thing I really do is cut out the cores, slice them up, and put them in this Dutch oven. Once they're in your pot, you guys are just going to add enough water to cover the bottom of the pot. And at this time, feel free to add any sweeteners. I don't mind, but you guys can add honey, sugar, nut, whatever you want up to your taste. And then we're going to put it on the stove, and I just cook it at like medium until the apples are completely soft. This took me about 20 minutes to finish completely, and I also like to put a lid on my pot and make sure that you're stirring throughout so that they don't burn to the bottom. And then while you're waiting, get out that whatever large pot you're going to use for your water bath canning, and it needs to be tall enough that you at least have a couple of inches of room above whatever jars you're using. So for anyone new here who doesn't know what water bath canning is, we're going to be filling up this pot with water a couple of inches above the jars. So it's very important that you have enough space. You're also going to need some sort of rack to keep the jars from touching the bottom of the pot. That's also another important one. Now I have a canning rack that actually fits inside of this pot, but if you don't have a rack, you can use the bands from the canning jars and lids and make your own little DIY rack. I'll see if I can find a video so that you have a better idea and leave it linked down below. Once you're done, I'm going to sterilize my lids, jars, rings, everything in this pot. I'm gonna fill it up with water. I'm not gonna bring it to a boil, but I'm gonna make it nice and hot. And this is a great thing to do while you're waiting for those apples to cook. Once your apples are done, you're gonna go ahead and puree them. I find that the best way to do this is to use an immersion blender, and if you don't want it to be chunky, this is going to be the best method. But if you don't have one and you still don't want it to be chunky, I would recommend doing it in batches in the blender. Just keep in mind that this does need to stay hot throughout this process so that we can can it. You can also just use like a vegetable masher or whatever, but it is going to come out much chunkier this way, and it's not going to come out like those applesauce from the store. Once your applesauce is done and your jars, lids, and bands are sanitized, it's now time to pack our jars. And all you're going to do is take a canning funnel is the best thing to use. I highly recommend at least getting a beginner canning set. They're very inexpensive and they normally contain just a few essential tools for canning. So normally you can get a set that comes with a jar lifter, which is how you're going to be handling the hot jars. I highly recommend this piece. Tongs are not very safe for removing jars, especially from a water bath canner. And it'll come with a canning funnel and a tool for measuring headspace and removing air bubbles. This is normally a very inexpensive kit to get, and highly recommend grabbing it before you start this project. So you're going to put a canning funnel on your jar and fill your jars with applesauce, but make sure you leave a ½ inch of headspace, which pretty much means a ½ inch of empty room in the jars. So you're going to be measuring from the very, very tippy top of the jar to where the applesauce is. Then you're going to take your tool and remove air bubbles. You can use that air bubble remover tool or anything like a pair of chopsticks. Once you're done that, you're going to wipe the rims with some vinegar. This will just get any debris or applesauce that may have dripped on the rims of those jars. Then you're going to place your sanitized lids on. I actually tried 4 jars for the first time because I was having trouble with another brand that I was using, and this one was recommended to me a lot. And I have to say I'm really impressed with the quality of these lids and will definitely be continuing to use them in my canning. So if you guys want to check these out, I'm going to leave a link for them down below. Once you place your lids on, you're just going to screw the bands on fingertip tight. So it's very important not to have them tighter than that, but it's also important not to have them looser than that. So just try and get them fingertip tight. The purpose of the bands is only to hold the lids in place while canning. Once this is done, you're gonna load up your pot with these jars. Make sure that the water is as hot as the jars of applesauce or around the same temperature. Once you put them in, make sure that the water is at least covering the jars by a couple of inches. This is very, very important. Then place a lid on, and once it starts to boil, set a timer for 20 minutes. If the pot stops boiling at any point during these 20 minutes, make sure that you restart the timer. It needs to boil for the entire time. Once the 20-minute timer is up, turn off the heat and remove the pot from the hot stove. Set a timer for 5 minutes before removing the jars from the canner and placing them on a towel on the counter. Then you're gonna wanna leave them undisturbed for 12 to 24 hours. Once this is done, you can check the seals on your jars. By doing that, you can just press the center to see if it pops. If it pops, it is not sealed. Another way you can check is by removing the bands and picking up the jars to see if the lids stay on, or you can tap the lids with a spoon to see what kind of sound they make. There'll be a clearly different, more hollow sound on the jars that are not sealed. Any jars that are sealed can be labeled and stored on your pantry shelves. Any jars that have not sealed should be eaten or placed in the refrigerator and used like not canned applesauce. So that's it. Let me know if you guys have any questions about home canning, and I hope this gives you a great opportunity to get started with your canning journey. Please make sure to like this video, and if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe.